everyone, it's Alice, and today we are going to do some winter book recommendations. And we're in my kitchen because this is where I usually do these types of like specific book rec videos, and usually when I do these videos I will like bake something or cook something. I'm not going to do that today because I don't feel like it. I am, however, going to decorate some cookies. I didn't make these either. These came in a box. I never really make gingerbread cookies. I don't really know how to do it, and I feel like the store-bought ones are usually pretty good, although maybe I'm just saying that because I haven't had a lot of freshly made gingerbread cookies. But I just got a box of these, and then I got some ready-made like stuff to put on, some decor. That's what we're gonna do. It's very low on the baking, and it's like minimum effort, but it's really all I can do today. I have actually been sick for about a week and a half, and I finally feel semi-okay again, so I'm just gonna take it easy, decorate some cookies, and recommend some books for you. Anyways, we should probably just get started. I'm actually not that great at like decorating cookies, so we'll see how this goes. This has like trees, men, snowflakes, a tree, and then I also saw a bell and a heart, I think. Maybe we should start with the tree. It is always a challenge for me to do things while I'm talking, so we'll see how this goes. Usually when I do like baking and stuff, I kind of do the baking in between the talking because I can't do two things at once. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how we get on. We're just gonna get started with the first book recommendation request. It says, Spooky Chilling Murder Mystery in Snowy Wood Cabin. So the thing with this is that I haven't read anything that fits this perfectly that I've actually liked. I do feel like I read a book last year. I think it was One by One by Ruth Ware. I think that kind of fits this quite well. I wonder if it's set on a mountain and not in a wood. But I didn't love that book, so I don't know if I really want to recommend it, but maybe you'll get on with it better than me. But if you want a really good recommendation that doesn't entirely fit, I would recommend Burial Rites, which is an excellent book. It is set in Iceland, so you don't get this like forest thing going on, and it's historical fiction, and it's not like a traditional mystery. It's about this woman who has been sentenced to death for a murder, and she goes to live with this family like in this super desolate place, and she lives in this cabin-like house, and she just stays there and awaits her fate. And the story is sort of unravels what actually happened and why she's there and how she got there. It's a really, really good book, and you get that like wintry mystery thing that I think is excellent, but it's a little bit more desolate than spooky, maybe. I do feel like I should be able to come up with more books for this though, but I don't know, I don't think I've read that many. I feel like I hear about these kinds of books a lot, but then I don't actually read a lot of them. I don't think it's a super uncommon thing to have like a spooky, chilling mystery in winter in a forest. But if anyone else has any recommendations, let us know, because it is something that I would like to find the perfect book in, because it does sound amazing. The second request says, set in winter in Norway, but not a thriller or a mystery. I realized that a lot of the books that I have read that are set in Norway during winter are mysteries and thrillers, but I do have one recommendation for you. It's The Ice Palace, which is like, it doesn't get more Norwegian or more wintry than this book. The story is about these two girls who become friends. They have quite a short friendship, but they feel an immediate connection to each other. And then one of the girls goes missing, and the other girl, like, her world is shattered when this happens. And the story is about loss and grief and friendship, and there is an ice palace in it. And it's a lovely book. It's considered this author's like masterpiece, like his best work, and it's a little bit peculiar, but it is very good. The next request says, I wonder if you know a good cozy nonfiction book. This is a little bit difficult because a lot of the nonfiction that I read is kind of heavy, but maybe something like The Diary of a Bookseller, which is The Diary of a Bookseller. It's about this guy who runs, I think, the biggest secondhand bookshop in Scotland. I don't entirely remember. It's in Great Britain somewhere. And it's just his everyday life. And it's about running the bookshop and coming into contact with all kinds of customers. And I'd say that it's pretty cozy. It is a little bit snarky. Like, the tone of it is a little snarky, so you kind of have to be into that. But I think that might be my recommendation for this. I guess I could also mention Crazy for Birds. I don't know if I would call this cozy, but then again, there is something cozy about reading a fully illustrated book that is just like filled with fun facts. So if you're into birds, I'd really recommend that. Even if you're not into birds, I'd recommend it because it's a great book. It's a real treat to read. Then someone wants a contemporary novel with a strong female character. I have a really hard time with this because what is a strong female character? Not to get like super philosophical about it, but I feel like the traditional like archetype strong female character, I don't really read those kinds of books and I don't really like them. So I don't know if I have that many recommendations for that. I think that a strong female character can be a lot of different things. So I have several recommendations for you for what I think is a strong female character, but maybe it's not what you want, but it's all I got. One of the first ones that I thought of was Queenie, which is one of my go-to recommendations for contemporary novels with a female main character. And I think that Queenie is a very interesting character. I think she sort of finds her strength throughout the book because she's in her 30s and she doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, and she's kind of like stuck. And I think she's a very, very interesting character to follow. The second one that I thought of is kind of like a weird recommendation maybe, but I thought of Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. And it's, I don't know, if you've read it, maybe it's a weird recommendation. I think it's a book about a woman who, again, sort of finds her strength throughout the book. And throughout the book, you realize that she's like a survivor, and that makes her strong in a way. And she learns a lot throughout the book. She's a very peculiar character, but I really liked reading about her. And she manages to get herself out of the hole that she's in at the beginning of the book, which I think takes some strength. If you want more of like a traditionally strong female character, I guess The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Is this still contemporary? I think it came out like in 2005. It's getting a little bit old now, but that is one of the books where I've read like a more traditional strong female character where I really liked it. There is a lot more to her, which I think is why I really liked her. She's very multifaceted. She's also quite an interesting character, but she is quite strong, I would say, and I do think that the books in that series are really good. I like the ones that were actually written by Stieg Larsson. I don't necessarily love the ones that I think some other author is writing. I only really like the first 3. Lastly, I also did think of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. The thing with that is that a lot of that book is historical fiction. It has like dual timelines, but that has a very strong female character that goes through a lot that I think is quite interesting. I don't know. I feel like I'm not entirely nailing this recommendation, but it's maybe because I'm overthinking it. I don't really know, but I think the whole like strong female character thing is more complicated the more you think about it. I gotta say, I am not great at this like decorating thing. I think maybe this one looks okay. Looks pretty good. These in particular, I mean, looks like they're made by a child, but that's okay. I don't know. They look like aliens. I do kind of like them, but they also look like just slightly cursed. I am also making some of these because I know they're gonna be good to eat, but overall, this isn't my skill, I would say. Anyways, moving on. The next one says Christmas classics. And I haven't read a lot of Christmas books, but I feel like a lot of the Christmas books that I have read are classics, so I feel like that works out well. The first one that I thought of was The Mistletoe Murder and Other Stories, which is like classic Christmas murder mysteries. I think that's really good. And then there is a Poirot one that I can't remember the name of. I looked it up. It's The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding, which if you like Poirot, that's a great one to read. And then I do have this collection of like short Christmas classics. I'll put up pictures of them so you can see them. I've read 3 or 4 of these. I don't remember which ones I've read, but they're very sweet and they're beautiful books and they feel like a nice little treat for Christmas. Then we have a request from someone who wants a book with travel to somewhere warm, which I sympathize with because it is very cold here right now. I kind of like it and I don't love the heat, but I know that this is not everyone's favorite weather, and it is like, it's getting to the point where it's so cold that it's kind of annoying for me as well. It's like very much inside weather, which is perfect because then you can read loads. I have 3 recommendations for this. The first one is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi, which is one of my favorite books that I've read this year. I love this book. It's about a retired female pirate who goes back into pirating after like having been retired for a decade because she gets this quest in a way, and it takes you all over the sea, loads of different hot places, both real and not real, and it's amazing. I can also recommend Miss Benson's Beetle, which is a book that I recommend a lot. It's historical fiction, it's set in the 1950s, and it's about this woman who goes to the other side of the world in search for this beetle that she's dreamed about finding for her entire life, and it's about unlikely friendship, and it's an amazing book. It's also really, really good escapism if that's like what you want out of a book like this. The last one that I thought of was The Smoke Hunter, which is also historical fiction. It's set in 1890 or 1880s, I don't remember, but somewhere around there, and it's about this woman who finds a map to this lost city, and she travels across the world to the jungle to find what this map leads to. It's a little bit ridiculous, so you have to be into like books that are a little bit over the top, but it's a lot of fun and the setting is really good. Then someone wants a book like The Handmaid's Tale. This is a little bit difficult. I love The Handmaid's Tale. It's one of my favorite books that I've read. I think it has a very particular vibe to it, and I also really like the show, which also has a very particular vibe to it, and it's difficult to find that in other books. But I do have one that I think is like, it's not super similar, but it deals with a lot of the same themes, and it has like a darkness to it that I think The Handmaid's Tale also has. It's also, in my opinion, a very underrated book. I very, very rarely hear anyone talk about this, but it's called The Book of the Unnamed Midwife. And it's dystopian, but it's set in like a post-apocalyptic world. And there is this virus that has killed almost everyone. And I mean like almost everyone. There are very, very few people left, and they're just scattered about. And this virus killed more women than men, and it killed almost all of the children. So we live in a world in this book where there are like very few people left and very, very few women. And you can imagine what those women are treated like in this world. The main character that we follow is a midwife, and she is sort of aware of the fact that she might be the last midwife left on Earth, and she disguises herself as a man to protect herself, and it's about her sort of traveling around, and we see women being treated in all kinds of different ways in this book. It is kind of extreme, it is very dark, and it's very gritty, and it has like a desolate feeling to it that I don't think The Handmaid's Tale has in the same way. But I think it's just because there are so few people left. And it's a book I think about a lot. It's a really, really good read. And I think if you like The Handmaid's Tale, you would like that as well. Next, someone just wrote Dark, Dark Vibes. which I'm into. Now, I don't know if this person actually wanted like a wintry book recommendation, but I do have a dark wintry book recommendation. It's The Snowman, which is a mystery thriller. It's like Nordic noir. It's a part of a series, but you can read it as a standalone. And it's one of my favorite Nordic noir books that I've ever read. And the mystery is something else. It's basically about a serial killer who builds snowmen in the backyards of the people that he's killed. And the family will like find it, and the detective that we follow is like the first person to put all of this together, because having a snowman in your backyard is not that weird if it's snowing, and no one really made the connection. So it's about that and him like looking into it and finding all of these connections between these unsolved cases. It's really good, but it's very dark, and I still think about the end of that book a lot. Other than that, if you don't need something that's set in winter, Ninth House is a very dark book. I know a lot of people don't like it because it's so dark, but I love it because it is very, very dark, dark, dark academia. Then we have a lovely one. It says, a cozy mystery series to binge over the holidays. That sounds like a great plan, and my recommendation will not surprise anyone. It's the Thursday Murder Club series. I think this is a very bingeable series. It's also perfect for the holidays because it's like fun and a little bit lighter and entertaining, but it's also like really good, and the mysteries are really solid, and it's just fun following these elderly people running around solving mysteries. The fourth book came out a couple of months ago, and I'm pretty sure it's the last book, and I feel like a 4-book series is like a solid bingeable thing, and they're also just easy to read, a lot of fun. Actually, maybe I should binge them over the holidays and just reread them all in one go. That could be really fun. But I have a lot of other books that I also want to read, so maybe I should not get distracted. Ugh, I gotta tell you, this really isn't my strong suit. And I think I've actually decorated quite a lot of these now. I'm not gonna show you all of them because some of them are terrible, but they're gonna taste okay, so it doesn't really matter. But I think I'm kind of over it. I think I'm just gonna start eating these and we'll call off the decorations. I'm also like running out of some of this, which you'd think that there was more in these than there actually is, but that's okay. I can just eat the ones that I've made. I am not gonna eat this one though, because it's kind of my favorite and I love it. It's so silly, but might keep that one around until the end of December and then eat it. Okay, so next we have a cozy, heartwarming, easy to read fantasy book under 300 pages. This is quite specific in that it's also not super specific, and I feel like my first recommendation is not going to be that original, but I would recommend Legends and Lattes, which is like a famous cozy fantasy book. I really liked it. I know some people feel like it's overrated, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing. It's about this orc who retires from this life of violence, and she has discovered coffee, and she wants to bring this to this town that has never heard of coffee, so she opens up a coffee shop. She teams up with this other creature, and there's like a little ratkin thing that bakes. It's lovely. It's cozy, it's heartwarming, and yeah, it's just a sweet, wonderful little book. I don't really have that many more recommendations because I haven't read that much cozy fantasy, but I guess I can also recommend Winter Tales, which is like a collection of fairy tales, which I think is quite cozy. It's illustrated, it's beautiful, it's a nice little treat to read, and it's not that long. Then I got 2 requests that are not the same, but I have the same recommendation for them. One says a dark-ish winter novel that feels like a fairy tale, and the second one says fantasy witchy vibes in winter, and I have the perfect book for both of these. It's not going to be that surprising for a lot of you, I think, but it's The Bear and the Nightingale, which is the first book in the Winter Night trilogy. I would recommend the whole trilogy, but like, we'll start with the first book, I guess. It's set in Russia in winter, it's historical fiction, and we follow this girl who can see these like creatures that no one else can see, And there is so much happening in these books, and it's all amazing. It's a little bit difficult to summarize, but basically it's kind of a book about old magic versus new religion, and there's a lot of like conflict between that in these books. And it's also like a coming of age story. It's got some romance elements to it. There's like a winter king and this bear that is like chained up, that is a dark, horrible thing, and I'm summarizing it horribly, but it's an amazing book and it's very magical. It has like witchy vibes, and like the winteriness of it is absolutely amazing. It is perfect to read when it's winter. Next, someone wants something funny to brighten up my mood. I have a couple of recommendations for this. I just have to share my first one, like the first one that popped into my head is the book From Here to Eternity, which is a book about death, and it's kind of like of all the things to recommend to this person who wants something to brighten their mood, here is a book about death. But it really is a very funny book. It's nonfiction, and there's a lot of like morbid humor in it, and it's fascinating. And it is one of my favorite funny books that I've read. I don't read a lot of funny books, so this is like my go-to recommendation for this because it's one of the funniest books that I've read. It's not like super cheery though, so I understand if you don't want to read it. And after having thought about it a little bit, I can also recommend The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, which I read this year, and it is a romp. It's so much fun. It's kind of funny in a way. I don't know if I would say that it's like laugh out loud funny, but it's like chuckle funny because the world is a funny place. It's a lot of fun to read. It's kind of ridiculous. It's a little bit over the top, but I thought it was great. I do think if you read the first 30 pages and you're not into it, you're not gonna like it. But if you do like the first 30 pages, keep reading because the rest of the book is also like that. If you're not into that though, I did also think of The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, which again, it's not a funny book, but it has like a funny tone to it. There is something amusing about it, and it has a very particular tone to it. It is a mystery novel though, and it's like someone gets murdered in the book, but it follows like an 11-year-old girl, so it's never gonna get like that dark, or at least it doesn't. I'm sure there are books about 11-year-olds that are super dark, but I think that this is like a fun, amusing book that might cheer you up because the main character is quite the character to follow. Second to last, someone wants books about books. And I, surprisingly, like when I read this, I was like, oh yeah, easy. But then I actually thought about it, and I really haven't read a lot of books about books, so I don't have that many recommendations for this. I feel like I have a lot of those kinds of books on my TBR, but I haven't read a lot of them. But one book that I have read is a nonfiction book. It's called Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops, which is about bookshops and books, obviously, but that's a great one. I also guess this is a great one for if you want a funny book, like the previous one. This is a funny book as well. Like, it'll make you laugh, especially if you've worked ever in like retail or in a store. It's relatable. I also did think of Yellow Face, but I feel like that book is more about publishing than it is about books in a way. But books is a big part of the story. I don't know if this is like what you're looking for though, but yeah. I have a lot of these books on my TBR though, and it's really reminded me that I need to read them because I have probably like 15 of them that I should read. Lastly, we have someone who wants cold, snowy, small town, murder and or secrets. Now, for someone who likes books set in small towns, this was surprisingly difficult for me. I think it's the combination of small town and winter that I'm struggling with. I've read a lot of books set in small towns and small villages, but they're not set in winter. So that one is a little bit difficult, but I've come up with a couple and I'll throw them out. The first one is The Ice Beneath Her, which is a mystery thriller. It's Nordic noir, And it's not set in a small town, but it is a story with both murder and secrets. That one is really good, and then I did think of course, Murder on the Orient Express, which is obviously not a small town, but it is set on a train, so we only have a certain amount of cast, like there are only so many people on this train. It's more of like a locked room type thing instead of like a small town, so you don't quite get that thing. But there's murder, there's like secrets galore, like everyone has a secret on this freaking train, and it's a Poirot mystery, and it's amazing. And the wintry setting really is like excellent. It's so good in this book. That was the last one though that I had recommendations for, which is probably a good thing because I'm actually losing my voice. I can feel it coming, and we're gonna need to wrap it up because this is gonna go very soon. Also, I've been coughing so much throughout this video. Obviously you're not gonna see it because I'm gonna edit it out. No one wants to hear me cough like a gazillion times, but yeah, we need to wrap it up. I did get 3 requests where I couldn't think of any books though, and I want to mention them. If any of you have any recommendations, especially 2 of these, I would like recommendations for as well because they sound really interesting. The first one says a Victorian period epistolary novel with mostly female characters. My main struggle with this is that I haven't read a lot of epistolary novels. Like, it's a very specific kind of novel, and I just haven't read a lot of them, and I haven't read like a Victorian period epistolary novel, so if anyone has any recommendations for this, let us know. The second one is Nordic/Viking wintry dystopia. I would love to read that, but I haven't read anything like that. I feel like I know of a Norwegian series, but I don't think it's like Viking related. I think it's more like Norse. I don't know. I also can't remember the name of the book or the author. I can only remember what the cover looks like. But if anyone has any recommendations for this, that would be really cool. The last one, I'm sure some of you have recommendations for because I know a lot of you live in areas where you don't have winter. You live in like a tropical climate, and I'm assuming maybe this person does as well. It says, cozy, homey book fit for a tropical country with mostly rainy but sunny at times kind of Christmas. I don't have anything for this. All of the Christmassy, homey type books that I've read are very like winter related because I live in a place where in like around Christmas time we have winter and snow and all of that. But if anyone has any recommendations, let this person know. Leave it in the comments so they can find it, and maybe I should read some of those books actually to just learn a little bit more about what it's like in a tropical country during Christmas. Okay, we're gonna end it here. I know this video was kind of like light on the baking, but I hope you got some book recommendations. I hope you enjoyed seeing this little creature thing. I don't know why, but this makes me really happy. I kind of wish that the eyes were black so that it looked even weirder, but yeah, this is my favorite thing that I made today. And yeah, if you have any wintry book recommendations that fit any of the prompts that I mentioned in this video, I'm sure we would all love to know, and the people who asked for the recommendations can check the comments. That's always a lot of fun. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!